In terms of the coronation, though, I have to say, because I've been doing morning shows all this time, I actually go to bed very early, and so when I wake up, I wanted to just check that everything had passed off properly. We now know that 64 people were arrested over the coronation. I think this was on the Saturday. 4 of those have been charged. Now, amongst those held was the head of the group, Republic. Now, Republic want to scrap the monarchy and elect a head of state. That was Graham Smith. He was released on Saturday evening. He was kept in custody for 16 hours. He said there was no longer a right to peaceful protest in the UK, but Scotland Yard said it acted in a proportionate manner. We also know that members of Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, were also arrested. They had all sorts of information that had been given to them. They had intelligence that protesters were planning to use rape alarms to disrupt coronation proceedings, to scare the horses as well. So the question is, do you think the police actually acted legitimately, and do you think they showed enough restraint, or do you think actually the calls they made on those arrests went a little too far? Well, joining me now is Raj Chada. He's a criminal defence lawyer at Hodge, Jones and Allen. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, David.
Your view on the coronation. Look, this was a moment of national significance, watched by 300 million people or 400 million people around the world. We had foreign heads of state, we had royal families from across Europe, we had politicians, we obviously had the monarch and his family, we had tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people in central London, we had 30,000 police officers on the street, we had 11,500 armed forces out as well. So it was important that we maintain people's safety.
Absolutely, and it was there to showcase the best of Britain, and the best of Britain includes protecting our ancient fundamental rights, such as the right to free speech.
I agree.
And the idea that in modern Britain you can be arrested for holding a placard saying "Not my king" seems to be a bit disgraceful, really.
Well, the police say they acted in a proportion... I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what happened, but the police say they acted in a proportionate manner. They also say they were very, very unclear about what was attached to these banners, and the police actually said they were lock-on devices where protesters can use them to secure themselves to things like railings. Look, I understand, absolutely, it's a fundamental tenet of being in a democracy and being in Britain, but if you are in charge of the police at a moment of national significance, you have to err on the side of caution.
Well, you have to balance and assess each set of circumstances as they present themselves. And, for example, in the case of those arrested under the banner of Republic, they had been in liaison with the police for a number of weeks and had confirmed and discussed the nature of their protests and what they would be carrying. And yet that was all ignored by those officers on the ground. And there really is question marks about the whole police operation and the decision-making process to arrest certain individuals.
I mean, it's interesting. I've heard from quite a lot of people who were there saying that there were protesters that were chanting, that there wasn't really a big problem, and that the press have blown this out of all proportion. I mean, I feel sorry for the police, actually, because they can't win. If something had happened, let's say people used rape alarms, spooked the horses started stampeding and people were hurt or killed, the police would have blood on their hands.
Of course, but there's got to be an element of common sense here. The rape alarms that are being referred to were being handed out by a council-funded organisation at 2 a.m. in relation to what they normally do, which is hand out rape alarms to vulnerable women. There's no suggestion that these rape alarms were held by any activist groups. So it seems that in the desire to be safe, as it were, all common sense has gone out the window, and all idea of their legal responsibility, which is to balance each individual's rights, has gone out the window.
Just in terms of this, of course, the government has passed new legislation, hasn't it, the Public Protection Act, which allowed them to act in this manner. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it shows, that these events show the danger of that type of legislation. It is the biggest attack on the right to free speech since the 1930s. And if it is used in a way that is not proportionate and is indiscriminate, it will undermine fatally the right to free speech.
I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, I think that the general public are sick and tired of being held to ransom by a group of people who are very fanatic, let's say, about their particular cause. We've seen them blocking ambulances, we've seen them gluing themselves to the road, and I think the public are actually on the side of the police.
I'm not sure that's right in relation to what happened yesterday in particular. I think there is a great deal of disquiet about the idea that they've just gone too far. And as I say, it's about each set of circumstances being assessed. And if the police are not capable of doing that, why give them even more powers?
Well, I mean, I think it's very difficult in the cold, you know, when you're faced with a situation on the ground. I agree with you that we need to take a look at what happened. So is that what you're calling for? You want a proper inquiry into what happened?
The police certainly should be held account for the decisions that were made. And that will be done either through the legal process or through some sort of inquiry. But it is not encouraging that they are getting their defence out early and that the government are taking the side of the police already. Let's have some scrutiny. Let's have some proper independent scrutiny of what happened.
I mean, you've actually represented defendants in a number of high-profile cases involving the right to protest. Did they have a case, do you think?
Yes, the current protesters, we represent many of those that were arrested during the coronation, and we are hugely concerned about the lack of evidence and lack of information that the police gave about the reasons for the arrest. And some of these arrests were under very old powers, not the new powers, such as breach of the peace. And it's all indicative of a Metropolitan Police force that simply panicked on the day and got it wrong.
Why does a small group of people have to try and disrupt an event that the vast majority of people in this country want to attend?
Well, who said anything about disruption? You know, I think this is the danger of a narrative attempting to be already put out there by the state. There is very limited evidence, if any evidence, of disruption. Republic had placards, that's it. There was one member who had a press card who was arrested. Others were arrested for wearing T-shirts in relation to groups such as Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil. That's it. Now the question is that the police say that they had information intelligence. Did they triangulate that with what they saw with their own eyes and use a bit of common sense?
Well, you'll have to ask the police that. Raj, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. That's Raj Chada, criminal defence lawyer at Hodge, Jones and Allen.